Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalam ala rasulihi wa ahli ajma'in. Wa ba'd rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa ahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Alhamdulillah, we find ourselves once again in Ramadan. And somewhat unfortunately, we also find ourselves once again in lockdown. I don't think that when we sat down to make these lectures a year ago, we would expect that we would still be at home doing Taraweeh on our own again, but this is the will of Allah, and we need to be patient with it. Inshallah, it is something that will not go on forever, so that's something that we can take solace in. Just as a brief introduction to what these talks are, sometimes if you're flying overseas, you have a stopover in London or Istanbul or Dubai, and you get maybe 6 hours or a day before your next flight. And during that time, sometimes you get the chance to go on a whirlwind tour of the city. And you might see some highlights, but there's no way that in that very short time, you're going to get a real sense of what's in that city. But you might, just in that brief time, see enough to inspire you to return and spend more time and study things a bit more deeply. And that's really the intention of these talks. It's not that we're going to deeply examine all of the contents of the Quran, but rather in this month of the Quran, these brief talks are just to show you the treasures that are in the Quran, so that, even after this month is over, a person may be inspired to go back and engage in a deeper study of the Quran. Mawlana Abdul Wahid, he did encourage me to speak for longer. He said I could speak for up to half an hour, but I think the reason the talks were so popular is because they were so short. And while there may be a time and a place for deep and detailed, lengthy study, sometimes you need an appetizer, just something to pique your interest and allow you to go on, but still increase your desire to go back and study a bit more. And that's really the intention. And the Prophet ﷺ himself, one of his gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him Jawami'ul Kalam, which was that he was able to summarize a very complex or deep idea in just a few words. And that was one of the prophetic blessings, is that the Prophet ﷺ sometimes spoke at length, but sometimes would just speak a very few words. And in those few words were so much wisdom and meaning. And so a person doesn't always need to speak for a long time to say something of benefit. So just as an introduction, I wanted to just set the stage for the Quran. And the way in which I would want to do that is to ask a simple question, which is that, what does a person need to succeed in life? And I don't mean in a religious sense or a spiritual sense. In a very practical sense, what would a person require in order to be successful, for their efforts to bear fruit, for them to get through their efforts the outcome that they desired? Right? So there are basically just two things that we need. It's just two things. I mean, to say it is easy, to acquire it is much more difficult. But a person needs two things. The first thing you would need is an accurate understanding of how the world is and how the world works. Right? When we talk about the captains of industry and the geniuses of our time, we talk about people who understood life in a way that others didn't. And because of their superior understanding, they were able to do things that others couldn't. Right? So that's the first part. The second thing that we need is the willingness to adjust our behavior in light of our understanding of reality. Right? You might do something and it doesn't work out, but in making the mistake, you realize that it's not the way you thought, something was not the way you thought it was. Now, if you adjust your approach based on that mistake or misfortune that you have more success of succeeding the next time. But if you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, despite all the negative feedback you're getting, you'll never succeed. You might get lucky and have the odd success, but in general, this is not an approach which is going to lead to success, right? But if you can combine these two things, I guarantee you will be successful. It doesn't mean that you won't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that you won't have setbacks, but understanding and learning through trial and error how the world really is, and then adjusting your approach will eventually result in success, right? This seems simple, but in reality, most people struggle. Most people struggle to succeed. Most people struggle to achieve their goals in life. And that is because doing this is so difficult, right? Understanding and seeing the world as it really is, and then changing your behavior to match that is very difficult. And there are certain things that get in our way. There are 3 things that get in our way. The first is not having the proper perspective, not looking at things in a way that we can see them as they truly are. The second is our own egos. We may not like the way things are. We may not be willing to accept that the world is the way it is because that's not the way we want it to be. And the final reason may be that we don't see the connection between what we're doing and the results we're getting. And so a person may go to sleep late every night and then wonder why they're tired in the morning. It's because they're not making the connection between their actions and the consequences of those actions. And then after all of this, after understanding everything, some people just aren't willing to change. They say, this is the way I am and I don't want to change, it's too much effort. And this is in a very general sense. This is a universal principle that I'm describing. But what does this have to do with our month with the Quran? What this has to do with the Quran is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the Quran in order to enable us to succeed in this life. And what the Quran contains is the key to these 4 elements that I've just discussed, right? In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us the true perspective of the reality of this life. He is telling us about the way things truly are. And then He, through the examples of the prophets and through the examples of previous nations, He explains how those who were unwilling to accept this reality because of their ego, because of their stubbornness, because of their unwillingness to change, what was the successful result of those who changed, and what was the unsuccessful result of those who were unwilling to change. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that what you do in this life will have consequences for you in the future, in this life and the next life. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing to us in the various parts of the Quran, right? And so this Quran that we read, the first day of the Quran, inshallah, we will try to go through 1 juz at a time. Last night Ramadan started quite late, so I didn't get a chance to give a talk. But, what is the beginning of the Quran? What is the heart of Surah Fatiha? It is Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Guide us, show us the right way. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Baqarah, Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. Right? ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. That is the book in which there is no doubt. It is a sure and reliable source of information and guidance for those who fear Allah. So this is the journey that we are embarking on in this month. It's not, just to hear the stories. It's not just to hear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's warning and His promise. It is to change our perspective and to see the world as it really is. And to look within ourselves and ask ourselves, what is stopping us from accepting this description of life as it really is and implementing it in our lives? And so this is the journey that inshallah we will go on together through this month. And I will hopefully point out some of the lessons and perspectives that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing to our attention between its covers. And then through this, we will acquire the recipe for success, both in this life and the life to come. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.